So you will ask me, why are you talking about artificial intelligence? Because we are all medical people. Also, you will ask me, why are you talking about artificial intelligence? Because you are a gastroenterologist. Now, yes, you are right. So I tell you, if we ask a mathematician or computer scientist to talk about artificial intelligence, maybe a lot of us will not understand, because they will use their language, and that language we may not understand. But we need to understand artificial intelligence because it is coming in a big way in every aspects of life, including medical science, imaging, and so many other things. So therefore, I thought, being a medical person, I should be talking about artificial intelligence, at least the initial concept, so that you all understand. Now, once you understand the concept, tomorrow a biostatistics fellow will talk about it further. And even day after tomorrow, one computer scientist from IIM Lucknow will talk about it further. So today my job is to give you the concept, and subsequently will elaborate on it further with a more technical details. Now, if you look at the history of artificial intelligence, it started in 1950. In 1955, John McCarthy coined the term artificial intelligence. We all know in those days computers either were not there or was in a very rudimentary state. In fact, in those days, computer used to be very huge in size, maybe occupy a whole building, but it had very limited capacity, very limited capacity. Even in those days, when the computer initially started, it could not do two functions together. Like nowadays, what we do is, let us say I'm working on one software, I can minimize that and work in something else. And in fact, 3-4 functions computer would be doing together, means that one is minimized, the other one is you are active, and still that one is minimized, you may work on the third one. But in those days, computer could function only on one thing at a time. Now, from 1974 onward, computer became faster, it became smaller in size, and it became affordable. And that led to further advancement of this branch of computer science, that is artificial intelligence. In 1980, this will be called as the year of artificial intelligence. You know why? Because a lot of application on artificial intelligence started after 1980. Now, yes, in the medical science, it took longer time to take up. The other branches of life actually had artificial intelligence entering or being popular much before the medical science. This may be related to the fact that we medical people have aversion to mathematics, have aversion to computer, and maybe this is the reason. Okay? And obviously after 2000, artificial intelligence is in every branch or every sphere of life, including medical science. So therefore, we have to understand it. We have to get the concept, some hold on it. Now, when I talk about artificial intelligence, we'll be talking about a lot of terminologies. For example, one terminology is cognitive computing. What is cognition? Cognition means something like understand, like human brain can understand. Human brain can learn. Like if I make a mistake once, I try to autocorrect myself. If I make it second time, I still become more expert to autocorrect myself. And the third time I may not make the mistake again. This is cognition. That means from the output that you had, now you learn that this is what, if I do like this, I make a mistake, I fail, and therefore I must not do it again in the next time. So this is cognitive computing. There are other things like machine learning, deep learning, big data, and everything. Predictive analytics. Now I will talk about all these one after another. Now, non-medical field in which artificial intelligence has been used extensively include transport and logistic, travel, consumer, handling consumer, public and social sector, automobile assembly. Now, banking, like suppose banks use artificial intelligence just to know that what are the characteristics of a fellow who return back the loan money compared to those who do not return the money. So therefore, you have certain characteristics. Now those characteristics, your artificial intelligence computing will say that this fellow is unlikely to return the money back, and therefore you do not give the money again to that person. Okay, so it is used in email communication, it is used in social media, web searching. Like let us say you today search using your computer, you just try to buy a ticket from, let us say, Delhi to Singapore. Now next time when you enter into your computer or maybe Facebook, you will realize that the Facebook will show you these are the best flight from Delhi to Singapore. So how did that computer know that you are looking for a ticket from maybe Delhi to Singapore? So you are using maybe Air India website, you are using maybe Vistara website, you might be using Singapore Airlines website, but your computer learned that this particular fellow is actually trying to see a best air ticket to go from Delhi to Singapore. Like just now, Dr. Ghosh, I think Nilay Kumar Ghosh or whoever, now his tab was used by one fellow. Now computer learned that this tab belonged to so and so fellow, and therefore it keeps this in his memory or in its memory, and now trying to show that fellow again. So a lot of things are like this, like in the social media, in web searching, this is done using artificial intelligence. Store and services, banking and finances, I told you. Aviation and prediction of machinery failure. Like one of my relative works in US, he's an engineer, and I asked him, what do you do? He said, we use artificial intelligence to monitor the performance of the engines of the truck. So truck in US go from one place to another place, which may be very long distance apart. Let us say there are areas where you may not have sort of good places to maybe repair your truck in case your machinery fail. So he sits in his office and monitor the trucks, looking using artificial intelligence, so that he gives a prediction that your machine is likely to fail in half an hour time or 1 hour time. Now what that truck driver does is, once he gets the warning, what he does is that in a nearby place, he will repair the machine rather than going ahead to a remote location where he may not have enough facility to repair his truck. So this is prediction of machinery failure. Maps and direction, war, criminology. For example, I know some countries, what they use is that they use the face recognition software of a criminal. Now the criminal, because of the face recognition by a technology called pattern recognition technique, this also work with an artificial intelligence as a principle. What happens is that fellow's facial pattern is recognized by their system. Now suppose that fellow has gone from one place to another place, and there obviously you have all these cameras everywhere. Now web cameras or whatever you may say. So the surveillance system. So surveillance system recognizes his facial pattern and gives a warning to the police or the people handling the criminal that so and so person who have a facial pattern which is very similar to this fellow, or he's that fellow only. Now this fellow is located, let us say, in one city or in one airport. So this is using artificial intelligence. Now question is, this is all outside medicine. But what are the field of medicine where artificial intelligence is used? It is used in gastroenterology. I've given it in the talk because I'm a gastroenterologist. But truly speaking, it is not the gastroenterology in which artificial intelligence came first. GI endoscopy, hepatology. Now, where artificial intelligence came initially are the branches of medical science who handle a lot of imaging. So, which branch of medical science handle a lot of imaging? Obviously, it is radiology. So, radiology is the one where artificial intelligence picked up quite early and in a big way. The other branches obviously include pathology. There also you have a lot of imaging. Forensic medicine, because that has to deal with criminal. So that branch also uses artificial intelligence quite extensively. All other branches of medical science use artificial intelligence. For example, gynecology, neurosurgery, dentistry, oncology, cardiology, dermatology, you can name any branch. You can do a PubMed search with that branch and then do a Boolean search with A and D and artificial intelligence. You'll get 1 or 2 paper or maybe more than 100 paper. Depends on how much that branch has worked on artificial intelligence. Now, what is intelligence? Now, if somebody asks you what is the intelligence is the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skill. Intelligence is the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skill. Intelligence is the capacity for logic, understanding, self-awareness, learning, emotional knowledge, reasoning, planning, creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving. So, for example, like what would be intelligent way of doing things? Let us say that you saw a patient and the patient had certain characteristics. You have earlier seen that those patients who have this type of characteristics may belong to one disease or abnormality of one organ system. So what did you do? You took your previous memory. From the memory, you connected these parameters. In your forebrain, you processed, and after processing, you made a diagnosis. This included your previous knowledge. Second is knitting all these different symptoms and signs and investigation. And then from your data bank in your brain, you are trying to fit in that which particular disease that earlier I saw or earlier I read will have all these, and then you give the diagnosis. So this is, you have acquired the knowledge earlier. You have analyzed the available information that you have in your brain. Then you have applied this knowledge to make the diagnosis. So this is intelligence, or in other words, human intelligence. So what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is the field of computer science that is associated with the concept of machine thinking like human. So what did human do? Human took all the information that one particular patient had. Let us say you had information that the patient is jaundice. Let us say you had the information that the patient had a large gallbladder, which is palpable. Now you applied Courvoisier's law. You said in a jaundice patient, if gallbladder is palpable, it is unlikely to be due to stone disease. So you thought that earlier information that is written in the book says, in a jaundice patient, if gallbladder is palpable, it is unlikely to be due to stone disease. And you have seen earlier patient where you found that even a jaundice patient, if gallbladder is palpable, it is likely to be a malignant extrahepatic biliary obstruction. So you applied the previous knowledge from the books. Now what will computer do? It will apply the previous knowledge from data. So here it was book, that is data which is fed to the computer. Then what did you do? All this information that you had, you processed in your brain. And after that, you gave a diagnosis. Now, similarly here, computer will process in its system and will give the output. You will say this is too theoretical. It doesn't really practically happen. How can it happen? I'll give some example. Now, I know what you will be talking about now. When I gave this, that the computer is thinking like human, giving an output like a human, applying logic. Now, this is what might be happening to you. Like this is a survey which was done, I think, in Britain. Okay? And there, they asked people that what do you think about artificial intelligence? And I tell you, 26% says mistrustful. 13% said powerless. 19% were anxious. Does it really happen that computer can think? 14% were indifferent. 32% were skeptical. 11% were frightened. 6% disbelieved. So therefore, a good majority either were skeptic or did not believe or were mistrustful. So what I will give you is that I will give you the concept now, so that from this mistrustful state, you start trusting what we are saying. Now, I will come back to this. Let us say when we talk about anything, let us say I take an example. Example is that look at the relationship between blood pressure and mortality. Blood pressure and mortality. Where in a sick patient, blood pressure and mortality. Now you know that a blood pressure, when it is low in a sick patient, for example, septicemia, mortality is high. So take another example. Let us say blood sugar or HbA1c and mortality in patient with pneumonia. Or maybe we take a quantitative variable rather than qualitative variable. Let us say blood sugar on one side, and body weight on the other side. So our hypothesis is those who are obese are more likely to be diabetic. Those who are obese are more likely to be diabetic. This is what we do in medicine every day. So on this side, in the y-axis, you put body weight. In the x-axis, you put blood sugar. Now, if you now see the relationship between blood sugar in y-axis or body weight in the y-axis and the other parameter in the x-axis, you find a relationship. You can draw a line like this. So that means this line tells you that as body weight increases, blood sugar increases. But what you see is that this is not exactly like, you see, this is the blood sugar of a fellow whose body weight is here. Let us say this is the blood sugar of a fellow whose body weight is here. Now, it is not falling exactly in this line, but it is falling away from the line. So how do you derive the exact blood sugar of a fellow from this chart? Can somebody unmute and tell me? Anybody? Can you tell me that suppose if this is your chart, in the y-axis, let us say we have body weight, in the x-axis we have blood sugar, and now this is the already validated sort of data, and now in this particular patient, let us say the value is falling here. So it is not exactly falling in that line. So how do you calculate what is the value? Let us say this patient, I don't know what will be the blood sugar. I know his body weight only. Now, how do you calculate what would be his blood sugar? Can somebody tell me? Just unmute. if I say it is regression analysis, what is this? What is this? Like if you look at this line, this is the actual regression line. So what you say in the statistics, that in the y-axis you have body weight, in the x-axis you have blood sugar, and from this line you can say blood sugar beautifully correlate with body weight. That means as body weight increases, blood sugar increases. But it does not increase absolutely linearly. It is not that 1 kilo increase in the body weight will lead to 10 milligram per deciliter rise in the blood sugar. It could be that in one patient, 1 kilo rise in the body weight led to 10 milligram rise in the blood sugar. In another patient, it could be 1 kilo rise in the body weight had a 15 milligram per 15 milligram per deciliter rise in the blood sugar. So this means this is correlating, but the correlation is not 100%. Now, if it is not 100%, obviously it is falling little away from this regression line. Now, if it is falling little away from this regression line, what is this? The difference between the regression line and the value of individual patient, what is that called? This is correlation coefficient. Correlation coefficient. So that means if I know the value body weight of a person here, now I can calculate his blood sugar by like this, the body weight is equal to blood sugar into correlation coefficient. Okay? Did you understand? Did you understand?
Yes, sir. Body weight into correlation.
Yeah. Now, but unfortunately, this is called linear regression. So in biology, the data is not linear. You want me to give an example. Let us say, look at this height and the body weight. So I say body weight increases linearly as height increases. Obviously, this is not 100%. That's why if I know height of a fellow, I can tell his body weight, but provided I know the correlation coefficient. I know the correlation coefficient. But let us look at this. On one side, I have plotted quality of life, and the other side, I have plotted body weight. On one side, I have plotted quality of life. On the other side, I have plotted body weight. You can see here, when somebody is very, very malnourished, his quality of life is very poor. Then as he has increase in his body weight, his quality of life increases up to a certain level where it plateaus. And then as his body weight increases further, he becomes obese, and his quality of life falls. This is not a linear regression. Now, if I take away this bell-shaped curve and I ask you to mathematically or statistically draw a line like this, you may find the line is horizontal. That means there is no correlation. Did you understand? Did you understand? Yes? Anybody has any point here that he did not understand? Now, question is, but by using ordinary mathematics, this linear relationship cannot be captured. This linear relationship cannot be captured using the ordinary mathematics. So therefore, whatever today you are learning, what is written in the medical science, these are based on the assumption that biological data have always linear relationship. But that is not true. I gave a classic example. You will get 100 such examples where as the value increases to a certain level, there is a positive correlation. And as the value increases further, there is a negative correlation or inverse correlation. Now, can this be caught up mathematically? Difficult. But I'm going to talk about this concept to people who may not be very familiar with mathematics, neither I am. So I'm giving a simple real life example. Let us look at this bicycle chain. Now look at this. This is a piece of chain. Now this is made up of iron or steel and it cannot bend. It cannot bend. But what people do is that they take multiple pieces of such iron and then connect with a screw like this, and now it can bend. So that means this is linear. So this one cannot bend. Like I actually made a line here, but the line is carved. But obviously in mathematics that cannot happen. But suppose if this line cannot be carved in mathematics, so if you can put multiple regression system together, then it can carve like a bicycle chain. Anybody who did not understand? I'll go further. If you did not understand, stop me here and ask me question. You have to be interactive, na? Now let me go further and then we'll ask for interaction. This is what happens. So this is nonlinear modeling. This is artificial neural network. This is machine learning. So this is the concept of artificial neural network or machine learning. So what happened is, look at this. It is like that cycle chain story that I say. Let us say, can I take somebody who is not in gastroenterology and give me an example that you are going to do a predictive analysis using artificial intelligence? Anybody who is not in gastroenterology. Let us say you have a group of patients where the patient either survive or die and you want to predict based on the data that you have. Anybody? Haji, no taker? Can you put your video on? Otherwise, I can't see. Are you listening to me or you have put up video? Now tell me, I want somebody to take an example of prediction. You have thousands of patients of one disease. You know there are factors which predict outcome, and the outcome may be death, survive. So when I say death and survive, this is called binary outcome. So when you have a categorical outcome and that too either one side or the other side. So there are two categorical possible outcomes. This is called binary. So can you give an example which is non-gastroenterology example? So I know there are gastroenterology students also, but since I'm a gastroenterologist, I don't want to take a gastroenterology example. Can you give me an example? Is there any endocrinologist? Endocrinologist? Any endocrinologist? Yes, any endocrinologist?
Yes, sir.
So now if I have 1,000 patients of diabetes, let us say 1,000 patients of diabetes. Obviously these patients, let us say 5 years, some will die, some will survive. Okay, 5 years later. Now what happens is, what are the factors normally which decide whether the diabetic will have a long-term good outcome or bad outcome? I'm asking.
So depend on level of the creatinine and other
Very good. So,
complications.
very good. No, keep on telling 1, 2, 3, 4 creatinine. Okay, very good.
And retinopathy.
Very good. Retinopathy. Third.
And cardiovascular complications.
Very good. Cardiovascular complication.
And any vascular disease. And
Peripheral vascular
CVA.
disease. Very good. CVA. Very good. What else? Does it depend also on sugar level?
Yes, sir. So glycemic control.
Yes. Does it depend on body weight?
Yes, sir. If obese, there the more complications.
Now, does it depend on COPD, presence of COPD? Let us say a diabetic fellow with COPD, another diabetic fellow without COPD.
So comorbidity will increase the complications.
Very good.
Mortality.
Does it depend on age?
Yes, sir.
Does it depend on gender?
Um,
Yes or no? You don't know, no problem. Does it depend
no,
on how much care he get, medical care?
yes, sir.
Does it depend on compliance to drug?
Yes, sir. Compliance ban.
Okay. Does it depend on something like, let us say, comorbidity you have already said. Now you got almost 12 variables. Now these are input variables. These are input variables. So here you say creatinine value milligram per deciliter. You say here presence of cardiovascular complication, which is categorical data. This is continuous data. Here you say HbA1c level. Here you say, let us say, presence of COPD. Here you say, let us say, presence of another malignancy or whatever you may say. So you have given all these as input variables. Input variables are either categorical or they are continuous. Input variables are either categorical or they are continuous. Now what happens is, now this is the regression equation 1, this is the regression equation 2, this is the regression equation 3, this is the regression equation 4. Now the regression equation means input A. Let us say this is input A. Input B, this is the input B. So let us say input A is your HbA1c. Let us say input B is, let us say, your creatinine level. So when this input A, HbA1c value and creatinine value, and obviously W1 means correlation coefficient 1, W2 means correlation coefficient 2. So creatinine will have a correlation coefficient. Now this one, HbA1c, will have a correlation coefficient. So value of creatinine into W1, which is the correlation coefficient, value of HbA1c into W2, which is the correlation coefficient, they will come here in the regression equation. So the regression equation is A, let us say that is HbA1c, into W1 plus B into W2. This is creatinine into regression equation 2. Now there is a threshold. This threshold, if it crosses, if the A into W1 plus B into W2 crosses a particular threshold, this particular regression equation will influence the next regression equation. Now in the next regression equation, again this input is coming. Let us say this input is coming. This input, let us say presence of cardiac disease. Let us say this is COPD. They together give this regression equation, and from there this input is coming. When these two input crosses a threshold, it influences the output. So what is the output? Output is 5-year survival or death in 5 years. That is the output. Let us say you give one patient to this network. Now what network does is that it tries to predict that this fellow has either survived or died in after 5 years or at 5 years. Now if the prediction is right, very good. But if the prediction is wrong, how does the network know whether prediction is right or wrong? Because you feed the network the data. You feed the network the data, actually the patient died or patient survived. So when initially you train the network, you don't tell the network that whether the patient died or patient survived, but the network itself predict, and then subsequently you tell the network what happens to the patient, and then network actually understand that it has made an error, so it back propagates and adjusts the value of W1, adjust the value of W2, and adjust the value of threshold in this particular node. Did you understand or not? Is it not the same what happens in human brain?
Yes, sir. It learns by the mistakes.
Yeah, so you are all under training period in SGPGI. So like a network gets trained, you are also doing training. Let us say you make a mistake. Let us say you do an endoscopy because I am a gastroenterologist and you created a perforation. You start thinking, what did I do wrong? Then you start thinking, did I lock the scope and go in? Did I apply too much force? And then you adjust this particular force or this particular error that you locked the endoscope and went in. So the same thing network is doing. So that's why this is called multi-layer perceptron network. Why is it called multi-layer perceptron? This has multiple layer. This is one layer. This is second layer. And why it is perceptron? Because it is perceiving. Each layer is perceiving from its mistake that it has committed a mistake, and therefore it is adjusting the value of the threshold so that it is making the threshold either high or low for influencing the next node. So that is adjusting or enlarging. Okay. So that's why it is called multi-layer perceptron, because there are multiple layers and these layers actually do perception. So it is inspired by structure of human brain. It has also basic unit called neutron or perceptron. This is the perceptron. This is one perceptron, this is one perceptron, this is one perceptron, this is one perceptron. It works in the principle of feed forward and back propagation. So what you did is you gave the value of HbA1c, you gave the value of creatinine, you gave the value of maybe age, you gave the value of gender, you may be giving the value of, let us say, coronary disease, let us say COPD, and then it went forward. So it is a feed forward. And then when it made an error, it back propagated and adjusted its connection. How did it adjust the connection? It changed the value of the threshold here. It changed the correlation coefficient here. It changed the correlation coefficient here. And that's why I have put here a picture of a neuron. So like a neuron has afferent. Here, these are the afferent. Then I put this axon. So these are the axons. And then I put a synapse, and these are the synapses. So this is called multi-layer perceptron network. And the multi-layer perceptron network is typically used when you are doing prediction. Let us say prediction of an outcome of a group of patient with a disease and so on. So it is like this. See, look at this. These are the input. X1, let us say Xn. Then these are the weights, WO, W0, W1, and so on. Then this is the sum of the weight. And then this is the step function. The step function is if it went above a particular threshold, then only it will influence the subsequent network. So let us now talk about three terminologies that artificial intelligence uses. One is artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a computer program that mimic human cognitive function such as learning and problem solving. Machine learning is a computer-based method for analyzing data and learning descriptive or predictive model. And deep learning is machine learning based on complex architecture of artificial intelligence. So when artificial intelligence is the mathematical principle, now machine learning is using the computer, and the two together is called deep learning. Now, I was telling you initially that we can think, we can do a judgment. Computer can also do a thinking and judgment. And I told you maybe skeptical initially. Now, after this, are you still skeptical, or you think this is quite logical? Anybody? If anybody is skeptical, just unmute and tell. No taker? Any question here? So what happens is the advantage of artificial intelligence compared to logistic regression equation. Like you do logistic regression equation because you have all hard scoring system called child scoring system. Child scoring system is typically used in gastroenterology for assessment of liver disease patient. If a liver disease patient has a too advanced or bad disease, then we say this patient has child C liver cirrhosis, child C liver cirrhosis. Whereas if another patient has cirrhosis, but the disease is not too advanced, then we say this patient has child A cirrhosis. Outcome of child A cirrhosis is far better than outcome of child C cirrhosis. But these are based on conventional linear modeling system. And these are done long ago. Let us say in 1960s, child scoring system was brought into the literature. Now that gives a value of bilirubin, that if your value of bilirubin is higher than this, if your value of albumin is lower than this, serum bilirubin, serum albumin is lower than this, if the patient has encephalopathy, if the patient has prothrombin time prolonged, if the patient has, let us say, edema, and so on, then the patient has child C cirrhosis. When was this developed? 1960s. Now, obviously, management of the patient changed from 1960s to now. But the child scoring system remained the same. The child scoring system remained the same. What is the advantage of artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence, let us say we develop a model now into the computer, and then each time you see one more patient and feed to the network and tell the network what actually happened to this patient, each time the network will back propagate and adjust the value of its connection. So that means like human brain never stop learning till our death, artificial intelligence never stop learning. This is because each time you put one patient, actually it back propagates. And that's why it is called iteration. What it is doing is it is iterating the process of learning each time you are doing it. It is like you have come for a training here, you will do 3-year training. After that, maybe you will either become a consultant in a corporate hospital, or some people will like to practice on his own, and some people will become a sort of faculty member in an institute. Now, you will not stop learning after that. You 3-year training program, you will learn surely, but after 3 years also you will continue learning forever. So when we say child scoring system, it is analogous to saying that you will only learn during 3 years, subsequently you will never learn. Whereas artificial intelligence is like the situation, what happens to all of us, even after the training program is over, the artificial intelligence keeps on learning forever. Okay? So now let me tell you, artificial intelligence but require machine type data. What is machine type data? Machine type data means it cannot be a subjective data. It has to be a data with a number. The number may be categorical, number may be continuous. So like let us say you want to learn from image. It cannot learn from image because it is too subjective. It will learn from the image pattern. It will learn from the pixel. It will learn from the voxel. So pixel, voxel, and pattern, these are required. That's why one computer can communicate with another computer provided there is a machine type data. Like in days to come, it will happen. Let us say you do a radiology reporting. Now, once you do a radiology reporting, a particular lesion you have marked as tuberculosis. Now, the moment you mark as tuberculosis, the machine will learn in the subsequent patient, it will start predicting this may be tuberculosis because it has kept on learning by your input that you wrote tuberculosis whenever you got a pattern like this. Only thing is that now you'll say, like let us say there is an X-ray machine or CT scan machine in Singapore, there is a CT scan machine in India. Can this be connected so that both the machine learn from each other? Currently, it is not happening. It is possible, but it is not happening because there is an ethics involved in sharing of the human or patient data. That's why it is not happening. Otherwise, if it is allowed, it can happen very easily. Now, let me take a few examples because you will say this is all theoretical that you are speaking, but let me give some example to say it really happens. Maybe we'll elaborate on an example, on these example on the third day or maybe on Friday again. This is a disease called severe ulcerative colitis. Severe ulcerative colitis. So what happened is, this is a paper we published in 2004. So in 4 years' time, my initial days of assistant professor position here, actually we saw 55 patients got admitted with acute severe ulcerative colitis to our ward. Now what happens is, of these 55 patients, 45 responded to our medical treatment. Medical treatment, typically we give corticosteroid, we give antibiotic and so on. And 10 patients did not respond. So what I did is, on one side of the table, I put all the responder. On the other side, I put all the non-responder. Then I looked at different variables such as age, which is a continuous data, sex, which is a categorical data, duration of the disease, which is a continuous data, duration of index attack, which is a continuous data, number of stool per day, temperature, and so on. What we found is those which are marked yellow, this yellow mark means these are significant. So what we found is, if a fellow had edema of the feet, swelling of the feet, if the fellow had large diameter bowel, intestine, large diameter intestine, if the fellow's hemoglobin was low, if his C-reactive protein was high, if his prothrombin time was prolonged, if his fibrinogen was low, if he had Trulov with scoring, which is a clinical scoring like child's scoring, was high, then this is the fellow who would not respond. This is an univariate analysis. Univariate analysis means you are looking at the edema, presence of edema, present or absent, and you are looking at whether it's significant. What is the problem there? Problem there is, let us say, presence of edema means if somebody's albumin is low, then the edema will be there. If somebody's albumin is low, then the edema will be there. In fact, I forgot to mark this with yellow. Look at this. His albumin, those who responded, 2.9 gram per deciliter was the albumin. Those who did not respond, 2.2 gram per deciliter was the albumin, and this was significant. That means when you are seeing edema and saying presence of edema means you will not respond, this may be related to only albumin. Maybe edema has nothing to do. Albumin alone is predicting why to add edema there. And that is called univariate analysis, where you looked at each parameter separately. We did not look at relationship between this parameter and that parameter. Okay? It is like, suppose I do an open book exam for you, and for another person we do not allow him book, and then both of you do same score. Now, I did not look at that for one particular fellow, we did an open book exam. Another fellow, we did not do an open book exam. And you did same. Does it mean that you are equal? No, you are not equal. Similarly here, albumin low and obviously will lead to a presence of edema. So is the edema independent of albumin? Then edema should be there. Otherwise, edema should not be used for prediction. So this is univariate analysis. That's why this is called univariate analysis. And obviously, I gave you the concept. This is all with a presumption that the data is linear. It is possible some of the data are non-linear, like I explained to you, and those obviously will be showed as not significant because they are non-linear. So this is what we got. Pedal edema, transverse colon diameter greater than 5 centimeter, low hemoglobin, high C-reactive protein, high prothrombin time, low fibrinogen, Truelove score severe, clinical activity index severe, predicted that the fellow will die more often. But the problem there is, this is linear modeling. I explained to you this before. It is only, you see, there were too many variables here. Look at this. Number of variables were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 variables. But how many I have entered in the multivariate? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So out of 22 variables, only 8 were entered because that is the system for univariate and multivariate analysis. Univariate and multivariate analysis says that first you do an univariate analysis, see which are predictive variable, significant on univariate, and enter those in the multivariate model. Now, can I come back to that particular participant who took the analogy of diabetic or provided me data of diabetes? Can you switch on your video? Can you switch on your video? The person who gave the diabetic example. Let us say you have a diabetic fellow. Yes, switch on the video. Let us say you had a diabetic fellow. Let us say you had 1,000 diabetic fellows. Now, of these 1,000, let us say 100 died in 5 years. Okay. And 900 did not die in 5 years. Now, let us say when you looked at presence of COPD in those who died, actually, let us say 10 had COPD. So out of 100, 10 had COPD. That is 10%. Now, out of 900, those who did not die, let us say 7% had COPD. And when we do a chi-square test, we found there is no difference. Now, tell me honestly, as a clinician, would you say that if a fellow is diabetic with a bad COPD does not influence outcome? Is it so? As a clinician, you tell me.
No, sir.
Is it? I thought reverse. Like suppose I'm a diabetic. Let us say with my diabetes, I had a bad COPD. Okay. Even because of COPD, I would die. And now suppose if I have a COPD with an infection and acute exacerbation, and now my diabetic will get uncontrolled. My diabetes will get uncontrolled. So this is the current methodology today because our number in 100 was 10 positive. On the other side, out of 900, maybe 63 were positive, which gives a value of 7%. This 7% and 10% did not become statistically significant on chi-square test because your number having COPD was too less. So the advantage of artificial intelligence is you do not discard any variable. So you do not do an univariate analysis first and remove the variables because on multivariate modeling, because this was not significant. It is like saying somebody who failed in class 10, he cannot be a big guy in the life. Is it true? Obviously, it is not true. Somebody who has failed in class 10 once, now he cannot be a big guy in life, at least in education or in other areas like science, is not right. Similarly, if some variable were not significant on univariate analysis, this may be because of a small number of that variable being there in the group. So therefore, this is the importance of artificial intelligence. It will not remove any variable. Now, I will not talk about this. This is the artificial intelligence modeling that we did in ulcerative colitis prediction, outcome prediction in ulcerative colitis. Now, what is overlearning or overfit? This is very, very important. Artificial intelligence has a big limitation. And I'm sure this is going to be talked about tomorrow or maybe day after tomorrow. This is overlearning or overfit. Overlearning or overfit. What is overlearning or overfit? Let us look at our examination system. We examine lakhs and lakhs of students and only a minority we take in MBBS entrance. So they enter in MBBS, maybe 35,000 students. Then out of these 35% student, maybe 95% pass the exit exam, maybe 5% never pass and they fail. Now then, of them, all of them would give an FD entrance exam. Everybody doesn't get MD. So those who enter into MD, they will have an exit exam. In exit, maybe majority will pass. Now then you give a DM entrance, and after DM entrance, you will have a DM exit. So this is the guy. So why did you do so much in different steps? We did because we wanted this DMI exit guy to be the best doctor in the society. We wanted this DM exit guy to be the best doctor in the society. Now what happens is, yes, they become one of the best doctors in the society. But let me tell you, if instead of doing this, at each stage, we actually what we do is that we give them 1,000 MCQ. And we say practice this 1,000 MCQ and 100 of these are going to come in your exam. T2 classmate. So 100 of these are going to come in your exam. Now what will happen is that yes, you will get a similar product. Somebody will come out in the DM exit. Now do you think this fellow will be a great doctor? Like if I did not give this 1,000 MCQ, but I have a totally a system which was a sort of current system is. Anybody? Two model. One model is you are going through the current entrance system where you enter into MBBS, exit, MD. You don't know anything. What will be your syllabus? What will be your course? You read a lot and then you crack the exam. Other is in each case, I give you 1,000 MCQ. You practice those MCQ and of these 1,100 will come in the exam. Obviously, you know the answer. The answer is, if the second is the case, then this is overlearned person or overfit person. Why is it overlearned or overfit? That is because 1,000 MCQ he has learned too much and that's why he's doing too well. Now, whenever we do an artificial intelligence modeling, like in our ulcerative colitis data, what happens is if you take the same group of patients for training and testing, actually, this is an overfit model. This overfit model may not do as good as an open type model. So here what you have done is 1,000 patients you have taken, let us say of a particular disease. You have divided this 1,000 patient into 200 for testing, maybe 400 for training, and maybe 400 for validation. So what you have done is you have taken 400 of the same 1,000 patients, 400 for training, 400 for testing, 200 for validation. It is like the same example of MCQ exam. Okay. So did you understand what is overfit? Overfit, how to avoid overfit? You have to do internal validation with prospective data. For example, now suppose if I develop a model on ulcerative colitis like this, what I'm supposed to do is that once the model is developed, then as the new patient keep on coming, you actually see whether this model is performing similarly or not in predicting accurately the outcome of a patient. Second is you do external validation, because maybe SGPG has a particular pattern of treatment. That treatment may be a great treatment. That's why your patients are doing too well maybe. So therefore you go to Jhansi Medical College, Kanpur Medical College, Gorakhpur Medical College, KGMU, and see is it working similarly in another college. Then it is called a robust model, which is generalizable. So the external validation and prospective validation increases the generalizability of the model and the robustness of the model. What is your aim? Your aim is that if you develop a model, that particular model should be really useful for patient outcome measurement or a prediction. Okay. So let us take this example in GI endoscopy. It is very interesting. Let us come there. I will come there. See, this is the artificial intelligence system which has been developed in an endoscope. I'm sorry that I've taken an example of an endoscope, but it is a branch of imaging, you know. So what happens is that there is a company called Fuji. Now what Fujifilm has done is they developed a colonoscope. That colonoscope is an intelligent colonoscope. It can think. How does it think? This is called GI Genius. What they have done is that normally the colonoscopists, they start at 9 a.m. maybe or 10 a.m. They do colonoscopy throughout the day. So you can imagine that he is taking one after another patient into the table and then doing a colonoscopy throughout the day till 5 p.m. So he will see the colonic mucosa. Maybe in some places you'll find stool stuck up there. Obviously, it is a dirty job you are doing from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. But this is an important 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It is an important job. You know why? Because if you miss a polyp, what will happen? Now the fellow may develop colon cancer. So suppose if a colonoscopist has done a colonoscopy and he said normal, and in the West they do screening colonoscopy of healthy people after the age of 40 to 45 to prevent colonic cancer, so that at polyp stage you detect the polyp and resect the polyp, you cut the polyp. Now what happens is, if he has done a colonoscopy today and 6 months or 2 years down the line or 3 years down the line he develops a colon cancer, now obviously you may lose a life. It may lead to, if not loss of life, maybe loss of colon. That means you have to undertake a big surgery. And also from the doctor's perspective, he may be sued. That is because they will say that you missed a polyp maybe, and that's why I got the colon cancer. I got my screening colonoscopy done last year. Now what happens is, people have shown that evening colonoscopy has much more failure rate, or afternoon colonoscopy has much more failure rate than the morning colonoscopy. Because in the morning, you are fresh, you are full of energy, you carefully look at things. In the afternoon, you are tired and you may do a cursory examination. Now what this Fujifilm did is, they took 900 colonoscopy video. So these are like, I think this was done in one of the European country, maybe Paris. So maybe in France, yes. Paris is in France, but I don't know whether it is in Paris or some other city of France. There is a fellow whose name is Dr. Habib. So what Habib was doing is, Habib was actually doing colonoscopy, but he was recording the video of these colonoscopies. And each video he was annotating that here is the polyp. See, if there is no polyp, he will say there is no polyp. But if there is a polyp, he would mark that in the video that there is a polyp. So Fujifilm got access to these 900 videos, which are annotated, means there is a clear-cut understanding that this is a polyp and this is not a polyp. Now what they did is, they did artificial intelligence training using these videos, so that artificial intelligence system learn from these videos again and again by iteration, by back propagation, that if this is there, this pattern is there, if this pixel is there, if this voxel is there, now this is likely to be a polyp. Now what happens is, this network type is called convolutional neural network. See, earlier I was talking about multi-layer perceptron network. Multi-layer perceptron network is not used in the imaging field. In the imaging field, what you use is convolutional neural network. Again, that also similarly input. Then you have not a perceptron layer, but a convolutional layer. So then you have multiple filter and then there's an output. So what happens is, now what this GI Genius does is, whenever you take in a colonoscope, wherever it finds a suspicious lesion, based on the previous training, it will give a green box there. And it will tell to the colonoscopist, be careful, there is something here. Now colonoscopist, let us say he was doing a cursory examination, let us say he was afternoon tired, but because he gets a green box, he immediately carefully looks at this area, he even washes this area, and he finds the lesion, and that has reduced the failure rate to detect polyp in undergoing screening colonoscopies. Okay, I'll skip this because these are gastroenterology example. Artificial intelligence in medical research. I'll tell you, in gut microbiota field, artificial intelligence is going in a big way. Because in gut microbiota, what happens is you have 1,000 species of bacteria. You have more bacterial cell in the human gut than the number of eukaryotic cells that you have in our body. So now you do a sequencing of that much bacteria. So 1,000 species, more than the number of human body cell, this becomes too big a data to analyze by any conventional method. And therefore, this is called a big data. So big data analysis nowadays actually is done with artificial intelligence. So any question here? Now look at this. Let us say this is the body weight, or maybe we go there. Let us say this is the height, and this is the body weight, and you have data of 1,000 people. You have plotted their height. Let us say this is the height, and this is body weight. Okay. Another person, this is the height, and this is his body weight. So because height is less, his weight is also less. This is the height, and this is the body weight. Now this is based on 1,000 people, data of 1,000 people. And obviously you try to derive that if I have done a study using 1,000 people, then obviously it means that the next 1,000 also I can extrapolate from those 1,000. This is how medical literature works. Truly speaking, whatever we are doing is similar thing. Now let me tell you, this is based on the 1,000 people, you have plotted them, you have drawn a regression line. What you find, this regression line does not go through each data point. It doesn't go through. That means for each there is a correlation coefficient. Am I right? That means there is something a little bit away from that regression line. Now suppose you now got the value of correlation coefficient. Now if I give you a formula showing the height, body weight is equal to height into x1. Now the next person that you get in your outpatient, if I tell you the height, can you tell me the weight? Obviously it will not be exact, but it will be roundabout. This is what we do in medical science. Can you tell me? Yes? Who says I can't tell? He should speak up. Who says I can't tell? So there is nobody who says I can't tell. That means if I have done a study on 1,000 people, if height correlates with body weight beautifully, now if I can derive a formula, this formula says that body weight is equal to height into this, which is the correlation coefficient, then I can tell the body weight of a fellow if I know his height. This is how medical science is now doing. Now the problem here is this, that every biological data is not linear. Every biological data is not linear. I have plotted here body weight on one side and quality of life on the other side. And now you get values. What are the values? That body weight When it is very low, quality of life is very poor. That means all the malnourished children will have a very poor quality of life. Now, as they become nutritionally better and better, up to a certain point, their quality of life increases. So there is a positive correlation. There is a positive correlation. Now, after that particular point, as the body weight increases, quality of life decreases because you become obese and quality of life decreases. Better towards the class. So quality of life decreases. Did you understand this?
Yes, sir.
Now, if you want to draw a line here using the conventional technology, your line will be like this. I tell you, Control P. The line will be something like this. Now you cannot calculate because there is no relationship, hardly any relationship. So you cannot calculate. Okay? Now this is linear modeling problem. So artificial intelligence modeling is a non-linear modeling. You say, how does a mathematical calculation, like you are saying, regression? Regression can be only linear. How can regression be non-linear? I have given a simple analogy to explain to you. This is bicycle chain. In bicycle chain, this is one regression equation, let us say. This is not linear. This is another regression equation. This is not linear. This is another regression equation. This is not linear. This is another regression equation. This is not linear. When I connect them with screw, this can now become non-linear. That's why bicycle chain, you can make a roundabout of the bicycle chain. That is, you can bend. You can bend. You know the total internal reflection of light. You know total internal reflection of light. Light travels only in a straight path. Light travels only in a straight path. One physicist, what he discovered is if you put a narrow tube and within that you pass light, the light actually hits the opposite wall of the tube, then gets internally reflected, hits another wall, then internally gets reflected, hits another wall, and now you can make the light non-linear. That means light normally doesn't travel a zigzag path, but because of total internal reflection, light can follow a zigzag path. Did you understand this now? Did you understand this now?
Yes, sir.
Now, this is the multi-layer perceptron network. What they have done is that I gave the example of that endocrine person who gave me, he wants to predict mortality or survival of diabetic people, 1,000 diabetic people he wants to use to make this model, 1,000 diabetic people, based on the available data. The available data that he has is creatinine, HbA1c, blood sugar, height, weight, body mass index, age, and then let us say COPD, coronary artery disease, values of the lipid, and all those. So what we have done is this is the input variable. So you have given the value of creatinine here of one patient, value of albumin here of one patient, the same patient, value of blood sugar of the same patient, value of, let us say, height of the same patient, value of weight of the same patient. Now what happens is now these values actually comes to this node. What is this node? This is a regression equation. So there are multiple regression equations within the network. So what is this regression equation? Input A, that is, let us say, value of HbA1c. Input B, let us say this is value of creatinine. Into W1, what is W1? W1 is the correlation coefficient for, let us say, HbA1c. What is W2? W2 is the correlation coefficient of, let us say, your creatinine. Now, when A into W1 plus B into W2, let us say, becomes something more than something. Let us say here, I presume it is 1. When A into W1 plus B into W2 become 1 or more than 1, then this node will influence the next node. Did you understand? Here. Did you understand here?
Yes.
Now what happens is, let us say you are trying to predict. So what you did is you put the data of one patient first, then second patient, then third patient, then fourth patient, then you 1,000 patients. Now, when you put the data initially of this 1,000 patients, you have to take some patient for training and some patient for testing your model. So let us say you consider of 1,000 patients, I will take 400 for training the network. Let us say you take 400 for training the network. So when you train the network, you say what happened to your patient. When you test the network, you don't tell the network what happened to your patient. But when you train the network, you tell what happened to this patient. Like when we train you, like you morning, you present a bedside. Now you don't know the diagnosis, am I right? Now you give all the discussion and everything you do and finally come to a diagnosis, let us say pancreatic cancer, and we tell Dr. Asik, it did not turn out to be a pancreatic cancer. It turned out to be an autoimmune pancreatitis. Then Asik scratches his head. What mistake did I do? And he says this fellow was a 30-year-old man and I made a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. So the age is very, very important. That's why I made the mistake. So what you do is that in your mind, you say next time I get a young fellow, I must not make this diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. Similarly here, let us say input A is age, input B is, let us say, diabetes. Now, when input A is age and because of young age, the network made an error, it will increase the value of W1. So let us say your value of W1 was 0.7. Now it may make the value of W1 as 7 instead of 0.7, so that the value of age increased. Similarly, it adjusts the threshold this. Let us say its threshold was initially 1, it may say make the threshold as 3, so that you increase the value of age, but you give less importance to diabetic by increasing the value of threshold to 3. Did you understand?
Yes, sir.
Now, how does it happen? This is by error. So if there is an error, if there is an error, the network back propagates and adjusts the value of this threshold or hidden layer and the value of this connection, like W1 is the connection, W2 is the connection. So the connection are correlation coefficient and these are the threshold value. Now, why it is called multi-layer perceptron? Because you can see there are multiple layers. And each layer, what it is doing? It is perceiving. It is perceiving its mistake. It is perceiving its mistake and it is auto-correcting. And this is done by iteration. Iteration means repeating. So when you put a patient data, obviously you repeat the same process of forward propagation and back propagation. Forward propagation or feed forward. So you are doing the feed forward and back propagation. So you enter one patient data, your network is doing a feed forward, and then if it made an error, it back propagates and adjusts the connection. So that's why it is called multi-layer perceptron. Is it clear? So convolutional neural network is similar. It is similar, but only thing is that when you do multi-layer perceptron network, okay, when you do multi-layer perceptron network, what is the problem? Problem is multi-layer perceptron network can read your data, like you said age, you said gender, you said HbA1c, okay? But the problem is when you are talking about image, where do you get this data? You don't get a number from the image. In the image, you get a pattern. In the image, you get a pattern. So in multi-layer perceptron network, it recognizes the pattern. Okay. Now, second is that in multi-layer perceptron network, in convolutional neural network. Convolutional neural network is for image processing, be it endoscopy image, be it radiology image, be it pathology image, be it dermatology image. This is image. So image don't give you age 55, or gender like categorical or continuous data. Image only gives you a pattern. For example, look at this. I have uploaded this picture in the Facebook. Now, the moment this picture in the Facebook was uploaded, look at this. Facebook itself named me as Ghoshal. How did it happen? It happened because Facebook uses artificial intelligence. So what it has done is the moment he found the pattern of my face, there is a particular pattern, there is a particular curvature, there is a particular pixel, there is a particular voxel. What it has done is earlier, thousands times, it might have seen whenever I say a pattern like this, often he call him as Uday Ghoshal. Either he calls or somebody else calls. It is not like all the time I'm tagging my photo. Maybe all my friends are tagging my photo. Let us say the friend upload a photo and he tags me as Uday Ghoshal. So Facebook uses artificial intelligence. And what it does is that it does pattern recognition. So it had multiple iteration where it found the pattern of my face. And if found anybody finds this pattern, he writes Uday Ghoshal. Now this time, when I uploaded the picture, out of all this person, you see, this one he has recognized already. Did you understand? So this is pattern recognition, and Facebook utilizes convolutional neural network. So pattern recognition. Second is when the network is fully connected, there is a problem. If you connect everything, like some unimportant output variable also, input variable also you connect to every hidden layer, then there can be overfit. I explained you the concept of overfit. Did you understand the concept of overfit? Did you understand concept of overfit? Anybody who did not understand, tell me. Okay, we'll ask you later. So what happens is, therefore, it is not fully connected. This particular convolutional neural network, which is used for image processing, is not fully connected. Okay. Now it recognizes the pattern. It is not fully connected. It looks at the pixel. It looks at the voxel. It looks at the pattern. Okay. Now, therefore, this convolutional neural network are also like multi-layer perceptron network, but this is more regularized. It is less connected. It recognizes pattern. It recognizes pixel. It recognizes voxel. And so, therefore, we'll say the CNN are on the lower extreme of connectedness, and it is a particular regularized form of multi-layer perceptron network. Did you understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes,